hang on a second, how do I speak to myself? Do I speak to myself in a negative way or a beneficial way?
Welcome to the Social Media Takeaway. I'm your host, Therese McDonald, and this is the show for business people that want to know how to use social media more effectively to drive sales and leads for their business. If you enjoy the show, please make sure you subscribe. And if you know any friends or business colleagues who may benefit from this episode, please make sure that you share it with them. So today I am absolutely delighted to be joined by Danielle Serpico, and she is a mindset and business coach, an NLP trainer, speaker, and author with a mission to help ambitious individuals break through limiting beliefs, master their mindset, and create a life of wealth, confidence, and success. You're very welcome to the show.
I'm delighted to be here with you, Louise.
So when you say the NLP, that's the first thing I think of now. It's just programming yourself for success.
Because that is something I talk a lot about. It's called a presupposition. If we presuppose that something's going to happen, then we're hypnotizing ourselves, and we're all incredible hypnotists. We are very effective at influencing ourselves. So yes, we would be very careful of how we prime ourselves, how we set ourselves up.
So for anybody who is listening in here and they're just wondering if they have limiting beliefs, Danielle's going to explain to you now how you will realize if this is something that maybe you're doing and you don't even realize it.
Yeah. Well, the first thing is awareness. And that is the key. If we don't know what we don't know, we can't do anything about it. Right. But if we become aware, it's like shining a light. We will always know it's there. Even the very act of listening to this podcast is helping you to realize that, okay, hang on a second. How do I speak to myself? Do I speak to myself in a negative way or a beneficial way? So notice that. The most important thing that I always say in the step, after they notice that they speak to themselves badly or in an ineffective way, they tend to beat themselves up for it. That's what we call compounding. And that's the last thing we want to do. We don't want to compound an emotion. So in other words, if you notice yourself saying something like, oh, I could never do that, or I'm no good at it, or I'm not good enough, or blah, blah, blah. It's one of those negative things. If you notice yourself saying that, the next thing to come out of your mouth or in your head that we don't want is, oh God, I was so stupid to think that. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. And why am I saying things like that to myself? Because now what we're doing is we're compounding the original thought underneath another thought, and a thought that maybe might be linked to shame or guilt or frustration or anger to ourselves. So we're never addressing the original one. So that is the last thing we want to do. What we do want to do is we actually want to congratulate ourselves. We want to kind of actually recognize that you're amazing, that you actually noticed that you had the thought. Now, the reason why you want to acknowledge it in that way with enthusiasm is because now you're anchoring positive feeling to something that we want to notice ourselves doing. So if we anchor a negative feeling like shame, guilt, anger, frustration, our subconscious mind will protect us from that and will stop us from noticing. But if we anchor a good feeling around it, well done for noticing, now it'll go, okay, let me notice more for you. And you'll notice when you say it. Now, when you notice, we have the power to change it. So the next step after you've congratulated yourself is to just break the neural pathway and say something else. So say something like, well, maybe I can do this. What if I start looking at ways to do this? Is it possible that I can do this? Is it possible that I could? Say something that leads you in a better direction. And that's how you start the process of changing your internal dialogue. And it is extremely effective once you start doing it repetitively.
Absolutely. And then as you're talking there, it's occurring to me that you could also have somebody in your ear telling you can't do things. I think that's also a huge part of it as well. And I suppose you have to just make a choice not to listen to them. Would that be right?
You do. And I talk about this a lot. How do we stop? A lot of people ask me, how do we stop ourselves from being affected or influenced by the people around us? Here's a two-part answer to this. One is surround yourself by enough other people that will lift you higher. Balance the scales. If you have to be in the company of some people that are going to bring you down because you may happen to love them, they might be your parents or your children, and there's nothing you can do about it. You don't want to give them up, but surround yourself by other people that were going to lift you higher. That's one. The other thing is, I'll share a little story as a little analogy. And I'm sitting here in my office and at the moment, and it's chilly. And I remember my heating broke. This is a true story. My heating broke, oil burner broke a couple of years ago. And I bought this little electric heater and I put it in my big office space. place here. The room was freezing and I switched it in and the heater did its job. It worked its magic and in a few minutes the room was warm. Not for one moment did that little heater look around the room and turn to me and say, "Hey, Danielle, don't switch me on." And I didn't have to say why. And he didn't have to say to me, because the room is so cold and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do what I do because the room is so cold. The room is much bigger than me, has a lot more cold, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to heat it up. And the same is true for us. If we focus less on what is happening around us and outside stuff, and we radiate out our own energy and our own stuff, it will affect the room around us. It will have an impact. Rather than protecting ourselves, because when we're in protection mode and we're worried about what other people think and what other people will say, guess what? We're going to activate our reticular acting system and we're going to spot it more, not less. But if we focus on ourselves and radiating out, we'll have an effect on everything around.
Another thing somebody said to me years and years ago, and I thought was really, really good advice, is they said you should never use the word try.
100%. The word try, literally, because our subconscious mind is very literal. It's actually, in some ways, it's very clever. In some ways, it's quite, not so clever. And the word try is a perfect example. It takes it literally. So when we use the word try, it implies failure to your subconscious mind. So if you use the word try, and obviously you don't, but if we go around and we say to somebody, "Oh, will you try and do such and such?" we're actually hypnotizing them, influencing them to not do.
Yeah, when I hear people say, "I'm going to try and do my best," I'm like, "Oh no, you're just going to do your best."
Exactly. 100%.
Go and do it. Yeah, take out that word try, eliminate it from your vocabulary. It does not serve you. For anyone tuning in here who's interested in the topic, so if somebody did want to change their mindset, are there any steps that they can follow, Danielle?
Yeah, there's loads of steps. I would say, again, the first step is awareness. And actually, probably even before that, I like to say it's also right to be wrong. I would say open yourself up to being wrong. Start loving being wrong. About, obviously, your limiting beliefs. Not about the good stuff, but about the bad stuff. Start looking for evidence that you could be wrong. That in itself will completely revolutionize, transform your life. We are so stuck in what's called confirmation bias. We're constantly looking for the evidence to prove ourselves right. We love being right, but it is also right to be wrong. When we start looking for the evidence that we are wrong about things that are holding us back, that are keeping us stuck, that are keeping us miserable, when we look for that evidence, that is the first step. Allow yourself to be wrong. And once people open up, and when I get somebody, I teach people how to do this process and teach coaches and NLP and hypnotists how to do this. But the first step is always what I call taking the legs out from under it. It's a bit like sweeping the legs out from under it. We want to rock that solid base of someone's old limiting beliefs of believing that they can't do it, that life is this way, that it's too difficult, that they could never change, that they're too old, that they're too fat, that they're too stupid, that they're whatever it is. And we want to rock the belief, that negative belief from under them. We've got to take the legs out, and you can do that to yourself. You want to prove yourself wrong. Start going out and asking yourself, well, is it possible that I could be wrong? Has anybody else ever done this? Has anyone else looked for the evidence to prove yourself wrong, and your world will expand?
Fantastic. Okay, so awareness, step one. And the next step then is allowing yourself to be wrong so that if you have limiting beliefs that you can actually change them. Do you also believe, Danielle, because I definitely believe this as well, what you put out in the universe is what comes back to you?
100%. This might get a little bit woo, but this is also science. If you've ever touched on quantum physics, you may have heard of the observer effect. And the observer effect was an experiment that was done with scientists that is now fact. It has been proven that when an object, the smallest piece of matter, and this is what they did an experiment where they took the smallest piece of matter, which is an atom. An atom is the smallest piece of physical matter. So for all the skeptics listening in that don't believe in woo, you believe in physical stuff, right? The physical piece of matter, an atom, was shot through this machine, the scientific machine, onto a screen. And it did what it was expected. It went in a straight line as expected. Now, what was really interesting and what blows your mind, and it's very hard for us human beings to comprehend, is that when the machine was not observed by the human eye, guess what happened? It reacted every way possible. It went everywhere and nowhere and somewhere, and it did every single infinite myriad possibilities of results. It went everywhere. So, and they couldn't get their head around it. But basically, the quantum physics proved, and it's called the observer effect, and it's called the field of potentiality, that when a physical piece of matter is not watched by the human eye, every single field of potentiality is there. Every single possible result is there. When it is watched by the human eye, because the human eye expects it to react in a certain way, then it will react according to the expectation of the human eye, of the observer. So that proves categorically, in my mind, that it is our certainty, our belief, our presupposition, as we were talking about earlier. If we believe something, so we are so certain, we are so convinced, this is like the glue of the makes that creates. If we believe something with such certainty, then we bring it into existence, because that is the field of potentiality. So yes, what we believe actually manifests.
When it comes to business, what I'm kind of saying is you've got to believe that you can do it. You've got to see yourself, what success looks like for you, and then you've got to see yourself there. And I think the way that in my head I rationalize it, because I know you're talking about the woo and all of that, but I think what happens is if you really believe something's going to happen, you make different choices, you turn up in a different way, you present yourself differently. And when you present yourself differently, you get different outcome, you get different results. So if you come to it with a positive mindset and with full 100% belief in what you can do, and sometimes you can do stuff and it doesn't work. And actually, sometimes when things fail, it's a bit of a gift as well, because then you've got to reset and try something else. Oh, I use the word try. You've got to do something else to get results. So for anyone tuning in here today, I think now, if this is January, so you might be listening in July, which is fine, but most of you will be listening in January. What a great time to reset your brain, to reset your mindset. And if you need assistance with it, well, Danielle is absolutely the person to go with. And if you need assistance with your business, be sure to check out my programs as well. There's new ones starting again at the end of January. Danielle, you have a free gift for everybody here today. Do you want to tell people about it?
I have an incredible audio. And again, whether you believe in woo or not, I started off on my journey not believing in woo at all. But it is practical. It is very rational because, yes, exactly as you said, it's not even positive thinking. It's practical thinking. If you feel a certain way, if you think a certain thought, you're going to feel a certain way. If you feel a certain way, you're going to behave a certain way. If you behave a certain way, you're going to get a certain result. So which way do you want to think and feel, and henceforth the result that you want to achieve? So I created an audio, a guided hypnosis audio, probably about 5 years ago, 6 years ago now, which went on to help me, I truly believe this, with hypnosis repeated over and over. I created for myself. It resulted in me having my first 50K week.
Wow. Danielle, how do people find you?
Very easy. theblackbeltmastermind.com or Danielle Serpico. You'll find all about me.
Thanks so much for coming on and sharing all your wonderful advice. I think it's just really timely that we reset, refocus, and reinforce all those positive voices in our head.
It's been a pleasure, Louise. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it, everyone. That's another episode of the Social Media Takeaway. If you have some feedback, make sure that you tag us on social media. You'll find me under Cell on Social M, or on LinkedIn, you'll find me under Louise McDonald. I'd love to hear your feedback and what you thought about the show. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. And if you know anyone who may be interested, be sure to share the show with them too. Thanks, everyone.